Good morning and welcome to Fox 29 News Now on this Wednesday morning, April the 10th. It is 10 a.m. This is a live look right here in Philadelphia over the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, where you can see the Art Museum there in the back. Today is the deadline for the IRS to hand Congress 6 years of President Trump's tax returns. Doug Luzader had the story this morning with Fox 29 Good Day.
(7:10) today is the deadline for the IRS to hand Congress 6 years of President Trump's tax returns.
It's part of the escalating war between House Democrats and the White House. But Doug, we have a strong feeling it's not going to happen.
The pollen is in the air too here, so is the conflict. The Democrats in Congress think they have a legal right now to see President Trump's tax returns, which he has not, of course, turned over, and they have set a deadline of today for the IRS to do so.
President Trump has long been known for his wealth, but what do his 1040s really look like? Democrats in Congress want the IRS to turn them over today. And Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who technically oversees the IRS, took some incoming yesterday, suggesting a decision hasn't been made.
Secretary Mnuchin, will you comply with the law by the deadline tomorrow and furnish the tax returns, even if it means you may be fired by this president for doing so?
As I've previously said, I want to acknowledge we have received the request. As I've said before, we will follow the law. We are reviewing it with our internal legal department, and I would leave it at that.
And President Trump has long argued that his taxes are under audit, and he will not release them despite plenty of precedent from previous presidents. But Democrats point to a 1924 law that they say requires the IRS to turn over requested returns to Congress. Mnuchin did acknowledge that there have been conversations about this between the Treasury Department and the White House. But all of this could wind up in court, because President Trump's acting chief of staff has been emphatic on this point.
You believe Democrats will never see the president's tax returns?
Oh, no, never. No, nor should they. Keep in mind that that's an issue that was already litigated during the election. Voters knew the president could have given his tax returns. They knew that he didn't, and they elected him anyway, which, of course, is what drives the Democrats crazy.
Well, Democrats say that this request now is part of their legitimate oversight responsibility. Republicans argue that this is all about just trying to dig up some mud for 2020. Alex and Thomas.
We will see, but not only on the federal level, we're also watching on the state level, right, in New York as well.
There's an effort by some in New York to kind of make the tax documents available through that conduit to kind of bypass the IRS. That's right.
Yes.
So we'll see which one works first.
Introduced legislature on Monday. We'll see. Doug, thank you.
I want to switch over to a live event, the 2020 Democratic remarks in Washington, D.C.
Enforcement Mental Wellness Initiative.
South Carolina and Nevada. And it has to do with the way I was raised. I was raised by a mother who was all of 5 feet tall. But if you had ever met my mother, you would have thought she was 7 feet tall. And she was the kind of parent who, if you ever came home complaining about something, my mother would look at you and the first thing she'd say, well, what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for president of the United States. There you go. So let's talk about the importance of restoring truth in our country. So the thing about truth is this. Certainly over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about truth as it relates to truth versus untruth. But I would suggest we also think about the importance of truth in the context of this, which is the leaders in this room know. There are a lot of folks in our country right now who are rightly, incredibly distrustful of their government and its institutions and leaders. And the thing about a relationship of trust, we know it in our personal lives, we know it in our professional lives, the relationship of trust by its very nature is a reciprocal relationship. You give and you receive trust. And one of the most important ingredients in trust is truth. But there's a funny thing about truth. Speaking truth can often make people quite uncomfortable. And for those of us who often speak behind a microphone and behind a podium, there is an incentive that when we speak, we will make everybody happy. We will make everyone feel lovely. We will sprinkle lovely dust all over the room, and everyone will applaud, and job will have been done. Well, speaking truth doesn't always accomplish that goal. But there's another thing about speaking truth. Yes, people may walk away from that conversation thinking, I didn't particularly like what I had to hear. But they will also walk away from that conversation knowing it was an honest conversation. And so I believe this is a moment in time in our country where we must speak truth. So you all are looking at me, okay, Kamala, what are some of the truths you have in mind? Okay, well, let's speak truth. The economy of America is not working for working people. How do we know that? Well, we know it when we look at the fact that in America today, for almost half of American families, they cannot afford a $400 unexpected expense. A $400 unexpected expense will topple the stability of that family. That could be the car breaking down. That could be a hospital bill they didn't see coming. $400. In America today, in 99% of the counties in our country, if you are a minimum wage worker working full-time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. In America today, last year alone, 12 million Americans borrowed on average $400 from the payday lender at an interest rate of often above 300%. These are the realities of America today. And when so-called leaders in this town want to talk about, oh, the economy is great. The economy is great. Look at the economy. It's so great, they say. And then you ask, well, how exactly are you measuring that greatness of this economy? And they'll point to the stock market. Well, that's fine if you own stocks. Then you'll ask, well, how else are you exactly measuring the greatness of this economy? And they'll say, well, look at the unemployment numbers. Well, yeah, you know what? People are working. People are working 2 and 3 jobs in our country today to pay the bills, to put food on the table, and to get through the month. In America, nobody should have to work more than 1 job to be able to get through the end of the month, pay the bills, and have the dignity of living a life well earned. In our America, that's what it looks like when the economy is great. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth that building infrastructure in our country is building the economy of our country. And when you give a tax break to the top 1% and the biggest corporations of our country, that is not about supporting working people. That is not about building the economy. And we are tired of all of that old, dated, trickle-down theory talk. Let's build up the economy of our country by building and investing in the infrastructure of our economy, which will be about building sustainable jobs. And follow through on promises. Let's require our leaders to follow through on promises. People walk around saying they're going to build the infrastructure of this country. Where is the money? No, instead there was a $1 trillion tax cut for the richest people of our country who don't need that money. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth that on the issue of infrastructure, in our country today, there are 600,000 bridges in the United States, and over 200,000 are more than 50 years old. 1 in 9 of the bridges in our country is rated as structurally deficient. And let's relate that to the earlier fact about that $400 unexpected expense can topple that family. When you look at a dated infrastructure, when you look at roads and bridges full of potholes that aren't working, you know what that means for working people? That means that their tires go flat. Has anybody recently tried to buy 4 tires? You know what that costs? There are connections between all of these issues about not only the quality of life of working people, but whether or not leaders, supposed leaders, have insight into what is actually required to live in this country and work in this country and get through the days and the months in a way that we can be sustainable and can feel a sense of dignity. These are real issues. Infrastructure. In our country, 1 million pipes have been in use for almost 100 years. That stuff is eroding. And you can look at this related to also the quality of water in so many communities. I've been traveling our country. You think those eroded pipes don't have something to do with the health and well-being of communities? With the fact of whether babies and senior people have clean water to drink or not? There is a connection. Let's look at the issue that in our country today, 32% of urban roads, 14% of rural roads are in poor condition. We need an upgrade. We need to pay attention. We need to build America back up. More than 2 and 5 miles of urban interstates are congested. And you know, in the last few years, I've been living in a place called Los Angeles. Let me tell you, you see that every day. And again, if people want to understand the connections, let's talk about if you really have insight into the way people and real Americans are living in our country. In our America, people should not have to be on the road to try and get to their job for 2 and 3 hours each way. When we invest in infrastructure, it will require us to also think in a smarter way about how we are doing transportation in this country. It will require us to think about how we can improve the quality of life for working people. Let's invest in infrastructure. There are so many reasons why this is critically important, not only to our economy, but the quality of living and life for working people in our country. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth that when we invest in infrastructure, it's got to be done in a way that it's not just about putting money in the pockets of developers, but it's about putting money in the pockets of working people who will build those roads and bridges. And let's do it in a way that ensures that that investment, and it needs to be explicit, that when there is a policy to roll out a renewal and a rebuilding of the infrastructure of our country, that we make it and make certain that it is explicit that it will be done in a way that protects working people, it protects organized labor, it protects the building trades of America. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth. Unions built the middle class of our country. Let's speak truth. You know, I don't know if y'all have been hearing this recently. There's an interesting conversation that I've been hearing where some people around this town and other places have been saying and trying to call organized labor a special interest. Have you guys heard that? A special interest, which is just another attempt to shut down or to make weak what you do every day on behalf of working people. A special interest? We need to do some educating around here. Building trades, organized labor, built the middle class of this country. 5-hour workday, thank organized labor. Sick leave, thank organized labor. Paid family leave where it occurs, thank organized labor. Let's be very clear about who brought what quality of life to people in this country. Unions built the middle class. Let's speak truth. Let's speak truth. That in America, we need to protect working people, and that includes passing and having a workers' Bill of Rights. Let's be clear about that. We need to ban so-called right-to-work laws. We need to increase penalties on corporations that violate our right to organize. We need to strengthen our right to strike. We need to appoint a Secretary of Labor who actually cares about the dignity of labor. And we need to speak with our values. And I could go on and on about the truths that I believe need to be spoken right now, but I'm going to end with one that I believe is critically important in this moment in time where there are so many powerful voices in our country that right now are trying to sow hate and division among us. There are a lot of folks in our country right now that are trying to suggest that it's us versus them. They're trying to tell us that we should blame each other for what they have failed to accomplish. So let's speak one final truth that I believe is critically important to not only speak, but to know and feel in our hearts and in our souls. And that truth is this: the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. Let's speak that truth. And here's how I think about it. I think about it through a number of lenses, including what we've been hearing and we're going to be hearing in this election year about, this person in this region of the country needs to hear one conversation as compared to a person in another part of the conversation. I'm going to tell you, I think that is nonsense. I would say something else, but I know we got TV cameras here. That is utter nonsense. And it is yet another attempt to divide us. The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And here's how I think about it. I think about it in the context of what I call the middle of the night thought. Some people refer to it as the 3 a.m. thought. Other people refer to that as the witching hour. You know what I'm talking about. When in the middle of the night, you wake up with that thought that's been weighing on you, sometimes in a cold sweat. Well, for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of the party with which we're registered to vote. For the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of some demographic a pollster put us in. And for the vast majority of us,
I do just want to switch gears over to William Barr, where he is testifying right now in front of Senate.
Categories. The grand jury material, which by law must be retained within the department absent very specific circumstances, which I do not think exist here. Second category is any material identified by the intelligence community that would put at risk intelligence sources and methods. The third category is information that would impair existing prosecutions and investigations that are going forward right now, either by affecting the ability of the department to pursue them as effectively as we'd like, or being unfair to the individuals who are actually parties to that prosecution. You will recognize that Special Counsel Mueller did spin off a number of cases which continue in progress and are being handled in the department. And so we have to make sure that nothing in the report impinges on those ongoing cases. And the final category is information that implicates the privacy or reputational interests of peripheral third parties who were not charged. Now, the people who are making these redactions and implementing these four categories are the department working with the special counsel office lawyers, and those are the people involved in making the redactions. So, as I mentioned yesterday, we plan to identify very specifically which redactions relate to which category and try to explain why that redaction was made. I also said yesterday that when it comes to Congress, once I get this done and the public, everyone has the report, I'm willing to work with the committees. The regulation requires that, doesn't require, but it has my notification go to the Judiciary Committees, and I intend to take up with the House and the Senate Judiciary Committees, the chair and the ranking members of each, what other areas, they feel they have a need to have access to the information, and see if I can work to accommodate that. As has been correctly said here, the fact that information is classified doesn't mean that Congress can't see it. So I'm willing to work on some of these categories. The category I think is the most inflexible under the law right now is the grand jury material. But even there, once the redactions are completed, I intend to sort of read the report and see if there are areas where it affects the intelligibility or, really has an impact on the report. And I'm willing to work with the Judiciary Committees to see if there's a workaround that could address any concerns or needs that they have.
General, under the assumption that your answer was of interest to my colleagues, I'm going to continue with another question beyond my time. I want to talk about grant funding that's been delayed due to litigation surrounding sanctuary cities. Mm-hmm. So in the past, the department has tried to enforce federal immigration law by imposing special conditions or bonus points on recipients of federal grant funding. These conditions restrict grant funding to jurisdictions that certify they're in compliance with federal law, stating that they are not sanctuary cities or states. That's not something that I'm complaining about in this question. What I'm concerned about is the money that has been held up as a result of that litigation because of pending litigation in regard to burn JAG grant funds. We've had success in that occurring, but unfortunately that has not been the case in the FY18 COPS hiring grants. These solicitations were pulled and applicants are still unable to apply for COPS hiring grants going back to FY18 awards. Have you reviewed the department's policies? Is there a plan to figure out how that we can provide those necessary resources to local law enforcement to retain and hire law enforcement officers?
Yes, I think this is the problem is really a function of this phenomenon of nationwide injunctions that are imposed by district court judges, and this is actually a fairly recent phenomenon. The old practice in law was that if a district court judge issued a decision, the judge could redress the grievances of the parties before the court. But now courts are granting nationwide injunctions. As a result, if a district court in Northern California, which is, I think, the court that may have been involved here, grants an injunction, they enjoin the grant program nationwide. Now, one of the reasons we were able to, and Lee can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but one of the reasons we were able to get out the Burn JAG grants was that there had been a district court in Chicago that had enjoined it nationwide. We went to the Seventh Circuit. They required the court to reduce its injunction just to its jurisdiction. And when that happened, we were able to get out the Burn JAG grants. What's happened with the COPS grants is that it's enjoined by several district court judges. We're arguing, if not today, within the next few days in the Seventh and Ninth Circuit to try to have that addressed so we can get those grants out. But frankly, I think we need to come to grips with this issue of nationwide injunctions, because I think the way the system should do these issues should percolate up through various circuit courts and so forth up to the Supreme Court, and the idea that one district court judge can kill programs nationwide is a serious problem.
Thank you for your answer. If you're successful in finding a path to see that the COPS grants are available, please be prepared as a department to proceed quickly if and when that occurs. And I don't think local law enforcement has been able to even submit a grant application. So it is significantly delayed, and maybe there's a way that those grant applications, I don't know what the injunction covers, but maybe there's a way to submit the grant application even if you can't award a grant until you receive judicial authority to do so.
I'll look into that.
Thank you. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me just echo what Senator Moran was saying about the COPS grants, particularly in states like New Hampshire, where we have no sanctuary cities. It's very onerous for us to be affected by these rulings. I want to go back to your comments about the 4 reasons that you intend to redact portions of the special counsel's report. The 4th one was information that would unduly infringe on the personal privacy and reputational interests of peripheral third parties. Does that mean that you will redact information to protect the reputational interests of the president?
No. I'm talking about people in private life.
Okay.
Not public office holders.
Thank you. News just broke today that you have a special team looking into why the FBI opened an investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 elections. I wonder if you can share with this committee who's on that team, why you felt a need to form that kind of a team, and what you intend to be the scope of their investigation.
Yeah, as I said in my confirmation hearing, I am going to be reviewing both the genesis and the conduct of intelligence activities directed at the Trump campaign during 2016. And a lot of this has already been investigated, and a substantial portion of it has been investigated and is being investigated by the Office of Inspector General at the department. But one of the things I want to do is pull together all the information from the various investigations that have gone on, including on the Hill and in the department, and see if there are any remaining questions to be addressed.
And can you share with us why you feel a need to do that?
Well, for the same reason we're worried about foreign influence in elections. We want to make sure that during an election, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It's a big deal. Generation I grew up in, which was the Vietnam War period, people were all concerned about spying on anti-war people and so forth by the government. And there were a lot of rules put in place to make sure that there's an adequate basis before our law enforcement agencies get involved in political surveillance. I'm not suggesting that those rules were violated, but I think it's important to look at that. And I'm not talking about the FBI necessarily, but intelligence agencies more broadly.
So you're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred?
I don't. I guess you could, I think there's spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur.
Well, let me...
The question is whether it was adequately predicated. And I'm not suggesting it wasn't adequately predicated, but I'd need to explore that. I think it's my obligation. Congress is usually very concerned about intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies staying in their proper lane, and I want to make sure that happened. We have a lot of rules about that. And I want to say that I've said I'm reviewing this. I haven't set up a team yet, but I have in mind having some colleagues help me pull all this information together and let me know whether there's some areas that should be looked at. And I also want to make clear this is not launching an investigation of the FBI. Frankly, to the extent there were any issues at the FBI, I do not view it as a problem that's endemic to the FBI. I think there was probably a failure among a group of leaders there at the upper echelon, and so I don't like to hear attacks about the FBI because I think the FBI is an outstanding organization, and I think Chris Wray is a great partner for me. I'm very pleased that he's there as the director, and if it becomes necessary to look over some former officials' activities, I expect that I'll be relying heavily on Chris and work closely with him in looking at that information. But that's what I'm doing. I feel I have an obligation to make sure that government power is not abused. I mean, I think that's one of the principal roles of the Attorney General.
I certainly agree. I think we all have an obligation to ensure that government power is not abused. The question I have is what happens when the executive is potentially playing that role, and that's where it doesn't seem to me there has been adequate oversight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Attorney General. Last June, your predecessor, then Attorney General Sessions, announced that the department would no longer defend the Affordable Care Act's pre-existing conditions provisions because they were inseparable from the ACA's individual mandate. 2 weeks ago, your department went much further, deciding that it would not defend any provisions of the ACA. This puts at risk other important provisions in addition to protection for people with pre-existing conditions, such as the Medicaid expansion, dependent coverage for young adults up to age 26, and coverage for preventive services. Now, the individual mandate is a highly regressive penalty, and I've long opposed it, and Congress repealed it. But I disagree strongly with the department's decision not to defend the rest of the ACA. In a letter that I wrote to your predecessor last June and to you on April 1st, I made the point that the individual mandate can be struck down and severed from the ACA while the remainder of the law can stay in place. And this isn't just my opinion. In 2010, the Chief Justice Roberts said in the Free Enterprise Fund case that under the doctrine of severability, that generally speaking, when confronting a constitutional flaw, we try to limit the solution to the problem, severing any problematic portions while leaving the remainder intact. In 1990, when you were head of the department's Office of Legal Counsel under President George Herbert Walker Bush, you authored an opinion finding that the president could enforce the remainder of the statute after an unconstitutional provision had been severed. I agree wholeheartedly with your 1990 opinion. What led you to take a different approach?
Thank you, Senator. When I visited with you before my confirmation, I promised you that I would personally take a look at this issue, and I did. And I studied it carefully, and I provided my views robustly within the deliberative process that was going on within the executive branch. As I've said, when the Attorney General is providing legal advice, I think the first obligation is to provide the advice that you think is the right legal answer and how you would decide the case if you were a judge, which is what was the advice I gave. But I also have said that if the other stakeholders in the executive branch and the people involved, the agencies and so forth, end up in a different place, as litigator for the United States, the Attorney General should be able to advance positions that he believes are defensible and reasonable legal positions, even if they are not positions that the Attorney General would adopt if the Attorney General was the judge deciding the case. In this situation, the ultimate decision was to support the position of the states, including Texas, and the decision of the district court judge. The rationale for that is that it is a defensible and reasonable legal position, given that that was the decision of the district court and the position of 4 justices on the original NFIB case who felt that if the mandate goes, the rest of the statute goes. I know there's an additional point there, which is the fact that Congress did take out the penalty from the mandate, and therefore should that act be viewed as essentially validating the rest of the statute. And those issues were debated, but at the end of the day, I felt that the position was a defensible position, and it was the decision of the executive branch.
I would just make the final point that Congress had the opportunity to strike other provisions and chose not to.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Leahy.
Here's a live look over Old City, Philadelphia, right above our station here. I'm going to switch over to some business news. When's the best day to cap off your gas tank? Well, Fox's Tracy Carrasco has the answer, and here's her live this morning with Fox 29 Good Day.
When it comes to buying gas, the day of the week makes a difference in getting the best deal.
So Monday is the best day for New Jersey residents, and Tuesday is the best day. Well, let's have Tracy talk to us about it. What are the best days for people in our area?
Yes, as you said, the best day for people living in New Jersey, that's going to be Monday. For those living in Delaware, Pennsylvania, that will be Tuesday. According to GasBuddy.com, they say that buying your gas earlier in the week could save you money in the long run. They're saying really it's all about supply and demand, because earlier in the week the gas stations are a lot slower. People aren't filling up, so that's going to be the best time to do it. They say later in the week, that's when you run into higher prices. They say Friday is the worst day to do it. So really, Monday and Tuesday, all around the country, those are going to be the best days to fill up gas, especially as we've seen these gas prices going up the last 2 months, really taking an increase there. Any penny you can save counts.
Yeah, Fridays, they know you're going to be hitting the road for the weekend. We hear rumblings that the prices are going to continue to rise for the summer months.
You know, they always go up during the summer. We have Easter coming up, Memorial Day, the summer season of traveling. Definitely, we've seen oil prices going up as well. A lot of the oil refineries right now, they're doing their maintenance as they switch over to the summer blends. So really, we're seeing higher prices because of that maintenance. A higher number of refineries have had issues. So that's why we're seeing a shortage in some of the supplies.
So I wonder why it's Tuesday. I wonder what's about Tuesday that makes it better.
No, I guess they raise the prices on Friday, and then come Monday, they go back down. Try to get those customers back in.
Okay. Hey, I mean, I'm not going to ask why. I'm just going to make sure it's going to be on Tuesday if I go.
It's like seafood restaurants. You always see like half off on Mondays. Trying to get rid of the inventory.
All right. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Now I'm just going to run you through the latest news in our Philadelphia and surrounding areas. First up, a 29-year-old man is in critical condition after being stabbed several times in Kensington overnight. He was just walking down the street. Police say it all happened during an attempted robbery on Clearfield Street. Police say a few guys jumped out of the car and stabbed him in the head, back, and ribs. He was rushed to the hospital, but is expected to survive. In West Rock Hill Township, PA, police are investigating a fatal one-car crash on the Pennsylvania Turnpike just this morning. The crash occurred around 5 a.m. in the northbound lanes of the Northeast Extension between Quakertown and Lansdale exits. Authorities say the driver lost control of their vehicle and went up the embankment, as you can see here. Philadelphia police are also investigating a late-night shooting in Mantua section of the city. It happened on the 600 block of North Preston Street shortly after 11:30 last night. Investigators say a 25-year-old man was shot in the groin. The victim told police he had just gotten off the trolley when he was approached by two men asking for marijuana. He ran into a nearby barber shop for help. He is listed in stable condition. Well, a woman has been arrested for stealing a city vehicle and going on a joyride. Police caught up with her at 16th and Locust just before 9 last night. Investigators say a Streets Department pickup truck was parked at 12th and Walnut while crews were doing pothole repairs. That's when this woman in her 30s jumped in and drove off. She told police she was high on drugs. No one was hurt in the incident. Federal investigators are now looking into a 4-alarm fire at the Thrifty Irishman thrift store in Port Richmond. It took firefighters 2.5 hours to put out the fire Sunday night at Butler and Sepviva Streets. Crews stayed all night long to keep the hot spots from flaring up again. The flames caused almost $2 million in damage, destroying the building. Well, out in Delaware County, a woman whose SUV was hit by a SEPTA train has died from her injuries. It happened Monday morning on the Media-Elwyn line. SEPTA says the crossing arms came down for an outbound train that passed, but they stayed down for an inbound train. The agency says two drivers decided not to wait and went around the arms. Her car was struck. Her identity hasn't been released. Also in Delaware County, Upper Darby police have arrested a man for 2 child luring incidents. Police say Udi Nahera Arida tried to get 2 girls into his car on Long Lane near Clinton Road last week. Both incidents happened within a 20-minute period. Police say in one case he exposed himself in front of the girl. In Wilmington, Delaware, city leaders say a shooting on Sunday that hurt 6 people was the last straw. This all happened at Bill's Deli Market on North Pine. The owner is not happy, telling us they're being tied to street violence they simply can't control. They say the actual shooting happened blocks away and a victim just came in for help. But a councilwoman says that's not the only problem. The store has also been hit with repeated health and building violations. The owners argue they've made the necessary repairs.
I will do my best, I will call the cops every time there's someone, trying to do drug activity in my store. I will, do my best to keep my business running.
Police say they're focused on one thing, stopping the violence in and around the store to keep the community safe. As the temperatures get warmer and spring has sprung, you know what comes with that. In Fairmount Park, you can almost see the pollen where the cherry trees are at the Japanese house and garden. You can blame the roller coaster of weather so far this spring. Dr. Mike Sigriano says this time of year, his waiting room is packed with patients.
Beautiful but horrible. It's beautiful this time of year and you want to be out here, but you have to make sure you take your medication because if you don't, then you're going to suffer really bad.
I definitely have to make sure I take my medicine, and I also have to take an inhaler for allergies.
To save yourself a lot of sneezing in the long run, Dr. Mike recommends nasal cleansing instead of medicine, once in the morning and once at night. Well, today is much cooler than we've experienced Monday and Tuesday this week, but there's still plenty of sunshine. Sunny skies will give way to partial cloud coverage. Temperatures will reach a high of 62. precipitation is expected to return to the forecast Saturday with thunderstorms early. Temperatures are also expected to reach the 70s. The rain should continue through Saturday with a few rumbles of thunder. Susario tweets an early look at the weekend. It's not going to be a washout, but we can't rule out April showers on Saturday or Sunday. They will have a refined forecast as we get closer. Make sure you download the Fox 29 Weather Authority app for all the latest forecast needs. And in case you've missed it, here is a look at our Good Day segments this morning. Today is National Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, and a young survivor joined Thomas and Alex in the Good Day studio this morning to share his story.
All right, thank you, Bob. 7:32. Today is National Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. Its mission is important considering that infection rates in Philadelphia are on the rise.
Officials say the uptick is due in part to the city's opioid epidemic, and while the increase has been seen primarily in IV drug users, another group whose numbers are on the rise are our young people.
In 2017, youths ages 13 to 19 made up 8.4% of all new HIV diagnoses in Philadelphia. That's up from just over 6% the year before.
One of those people is a young man named Roscoe.
I found out I was HIV positive when I was 17 years old.
That was March of 2015 when Roscoe was a junior at Samuel Fells High School. The diagnosis was a shock for the young man who grew up in both the Northeast and North Philadelphia.
My initial reaction was that I was going to die. Like, I thought that, it was the end of my life. It just really hit me hard at first to think that, like, wow, I really have something like this.
It also hit his mother hard.
She broke down. But not because she thought I was going to die, but because she was like so worried about my life.
But as she would soon find out, Rocco's life did go on.
My first year, it was really hard to adjust it to myself that I'm HIV positive, realize that you're still here and you're alive, you're breathing, you're doing everything that anyone else can do in this world, and it's okay.
So we have Roscoe here with us this morning, and he's joined by Dr. Elena Tully, the medical director of the Youth Health Empowerment Project Center of Philadelphia Fights. So thank you to both of you for being here.
Guys.
So Roscoe, we want to start with you, and you talked about what it was like when you first found out that you were HIV positive, and then you kind of talked about how it's kind of evolved and your thoughts and views on it have changed. What was that process like, kind of getting to viewing it in a different way and knowing that it's not a death sentence?
Well, the process was really hard at first. Your first year, you're still trying to understand the fact that you have HIV, and then the second year goes by, and it's you're still here and you're still positive. But then as you get older and you start to educate and meet different people and your surroundings start to grow, you start to find out you're gonna be okay. At the end of the day, you know that you're still going to be here, you're still going to wake up, and you're still going to do everything that you can do before you was HIV positive.
It's about how you accept and process that news, but at 17 years old, because I want to go back even earlier, at 13, 14, 15, 16, what did you know about HIV?
When I was 17, I didn't know much about HIV. Actually, my school taught everything but HIV. They focus on, gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, all this that we had, the testers come in, but not once did people say, do you need to get tested for HIV at my school? It wasn't like that. So I wasn't really educated, so I found out I was positive.
And then when you encounter people or other folks, even today, do you feel like people are educated about it?
I feel like throughout my first year versus since it's 4 years now, a lot more people are getting educated, and I like to educate other people, but it's definitely been like a hard time to like, you know, try to educate people, because some people are really like they have a lot of stigma towards like, you know, what they don't know versus what they want to know.
And I want to talk about that stigma and the disconnect, because we do have a disconnect here, Dr. Tully. I've been working with the CDC for the past 10 years, producing a lot of campaigns specifically focusing on the youth. I want you to see this real quick, and then we'll follow up.
HIV doesn't have a face. It can happen to anyone, anytime. It only takes one time.
Why don't you want to know when it could affect not only you, but your family, your friends?
It's not just about you, it's about your community.
It's important to me, it's important to my partners, and it's important to my future.
Getting tested is a small part of the conversation that should happen.
There's a lot of stigma because we're so trained to think a certain way.
And they think that HIV is such a, you know, distant thing. Like, first of all, it's not going to happen to me. It's something that happens to other people.
I grew up in a household where...
And that young man goes on to say he grew up in a household, and the common theme that I heard with these youth is, we didn't talk about it. That was 30 years ago. There's a disconnect still.
Absolutely. I mean, we actually know that in our young patients, so youth under the age of 25 that actually have a diagnosis of HIV, less than half of them, or about half of them, even know they're positive. So there are a lot of HIV positive youth out there that don't even know their status yet. And I think that's why the message about getting tested is so important. You know, I talk to a lot of patients, and they tell me that, oh, their partner's negative because, you know, I think they trust them. Or I have patients that say, hey, like, I know I'm HIV negative. And it's a lot of assumptions, I think, because they don't think that it could happen to them. But the bottom line is, unless you've had an HIV test recently, you just don't know.
And it's also interesting, though, because now that we're dealing with the opioid epidemic and what's been happening with that, now we're seeing an uptick in cases when previously, overall, the number of people who are HIV positive have been on the decline.
That is true, you know, so still the vast number of cases, of new HIV cases in Philadelphia are still through the spread via sex, right?
Okay.
So someone who is HIV positive and maybe doesn't know they're positive yet, or they aren't on treatment yet, has, you know, sex without a condom with someone who's HIV negative, and that's how it's spread. But we also know that HIV can be spread through blood, right?
Through needles.
Through needles, exactly. So we know that we are in the midst of this opiate epidemic, and with the sharing of needles amongst people who, you know, may not even know they're HIV positive, we're seeing this uptick. So the city health department is very closely monitoring new HIV cases, and in the past year they've found a 50% increase.
50% increase. This is a problem that certainly, I mean, we're still dealing with it. 21% of new infections, 13 to 24 in the United States, 21%. It's important to keep the conversation going, not only in the household, in the media as well, in sharing your story. I want to give you the final 20 seconds here to let everyone know about getting rid of the stigma.
The first thing I want to say is U equals undetectable, and undetectable means untransmittable. So don't always think that somebody's HIV is positive means that you're going to automatically get it. A lot of times people take their medicine and they're going to be safe enough to know that they're not going to transmit it. I've been on my medicine for 4 years now, and I've been undetectable since. Not once has my viral load went up.
The earlier you get tested, the earlier you're into treatment.
And
Dr. Tully.
Yeah, we're grateful for people like you with Philadelphia Fight, making sure people have access to the medicine that they need. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Dr.
thank
Tully,
you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
and Roscoe,
guys.
thanks for sharing your
Thank
story.
you.
Appreciate it.
Well, Fox 29 Good Day revealed the hidden tricks restaurants may use to get you to spend more money. They're found in the menu, and chances are you didn't even notice. Fox's Steve Noviello has more.
Obviously I want to talk about this. When you go to restaurants, you look at the menu, you don't know what to order, you're apparently ordering the wrong thing, or you're being suckered into ordering the wrong thing.
Yeah, you think you're in control because you get to choose what you're ordering, but what we're learning is the well-crafted list that's a menu, and the hidden cues to get you to really spend more money.
Steve Noviello, all right, so what are we doing wrong? This is going to change the way we order, right?
You know, and here's what I love about this story, because I guarantee our viewers out there are going to sit there at a restaurant and go, that's what that guy said. Look, here, they're doing it, right? Now, let me be clear. Nobody's trying to deceive you, but maybe just to kind of give you a gentle nudge in the right direction to make sure that everyone walks away happy. Now, of course, there are the usual suspects on the menu, the flowery language, the words like fresh and light and juicy, and who doesn't love a dish adorned with, you know, almonds? That much you know. But here's what you don't. Unlike a book that we read from left to right, we generally read a menu right from the upper right-hand corner. That's where your eye goes immediately first. And this is a very important piece of real estate on a menu. It's what's called the anchor item. Take a look at the video we've got for you. This is the spot where the most expensive item on the menu generally goes. Not because they want you to order it, but because by showing you that first, suddenly the rest of the items seem quite reasonable. If the first thing I see is a $90 Kobe steak, suddenly the $60 filet seems like a real bargain. And have you noticed that restaurants have really started to shy away from justifying all the items to the left and then placing a nice dotted line with the prices to the right? This is so that it's now not as easy to simply scan that list on the right of prices and pick the least expensive thing on the menu.
Wow, and you make such a good point, because you do look to the right, even though that's opposite of how we read.
Every time.
And then they put some of the choices in boxes, along with shadows,
Yes.
trying to get your item.
Well, you know, and really that gets us into the topic of decoy items, right? So there's two ways this is done. You mentioned the boxes, right? Things that they really want you to notice. Also, a lot of menu items, especially at family restaurants, will have photos, right? And this isn't because the pictures are of the best stuff on the menu, but also generally the stuff that has the highest markup. So you'll often see a lot of times salad. There are pictures of that, or pasta, right? The items where they can really have a lot of potential for profits. And remember the expensive beef we talked about? Let me show you a little example out here. When given the choice between a $20 bottle of wine and a $30 bottle of wine, customers are generally not going to pick the most expensive item. So instead, restaurants know if they want to sell a $30 bottle, the best way to do that is to offer a $40 bottle as well. By placing this next to something even more expensive, suddenly it seems reasonable. And look, they know that diners are going to shy away from ordering the most expensive bottle. They will also shy away from ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. So now this moderate item is the most popular one, which you would have never sold in the first place had you not offered something even more expensive.
Except I usually order the cheapest thing.
I was about to say, for the exception of...
I'll take the chicken.
If you're on a date, because you don't want to seem too cheap. So you look at the 40, you're like, I don't want to spend 40. I don't want her to think I'm too cheap, so I'll go for the 30.
Oh, my goodness. So that's with the drinks. I also sometimes I wonder if there's a difference between when the drink menu is attached with the rest or if it's a separate menu that's on the table. Sometimes I wonder how that goes.
You know, sure, certainly, and you know, I'll tell you this, generally servers, you know, everyone says, the bigger the bill, the bigger the tip. These folks are generally here to be kind. They're not here to fool you. They want to make sure you've got a great dining experience. But let me tell you, I've spent many years waiting tables in my day, and we were taught a couple of tricks that I'll tell you about. One of is asking people if they'd like a cocktail as soon as they sit down. One of the things that this does is it doesn't give you a whole lot of time to think about it because you've been waiting for a table and you just want something, right? It also doesn't give you a chance to look at how much these cocktails are that I'm trying to sell you. Suddenly you've had a $12 margarita that you thought, it's a little late now. And also in my experience, oftentimes the chef would say, highlight these certain specials. And generally they are tasty and special, but oftentimes they are also the items that the kitchen has just way too much of and they need to move them before the inventory turns.
I didn't even think about that because, I'm like, ooh, what's the special today? And I get so excited.
We have a lot of beef. Please order it.
Yes. Or seafood on Mondays, which you may want to wait until later in the week when they go back to the market.
But when you brought up the cocktails, I also don't like when they don't list the price on there at all. Because I don't want to be that person to ask, well, how much is this? Because that's kind of embarrassing.
Right.
But yeah, some people just don't.
Of course, and and they know that, right? So they'll say, so generally what happens, you order it. And a few cocktails in, you stop even worrying about the price.
Yeah.
Right.
Pays
and then
off
you
to
get
say,
that bill.
Can I have a minute, please, while I look at the prices?
Right.
Steve, great advice.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Always saving us.
The 2019 iteration of the Miss USA competition will be held May 2nd in Nevada. It will air live right here on Fox 29. This morning, Miss USA Sarah Rose Summers and Miss Delaware USA Jolisa Copeman the latter of whom will be competing in the title in May, joined Good Day ahead of the competition. Here's a look at that segment.
Oh, sorry. All right, so the Miss USA competition for this year is going to be held May 2nd. It will be in place at the Grand Sierra Resort and Casino. It's out there in Nevada.
It's going to air live right here on Fox 29 at 9 o'clock. Of course, the highlight is the crowning, right? Let's get the microphone here as we take a look at this.
Oh, goosebumps. Both of you are strong, beautiful, and deserving women, but there can only be one winner. Miss USA 2018 is Nebraska!
That was the big moment. And so she's here. She was Miss Nebraska then, but now she's Miss USA.
Not for much longer.
That's true.
Oh, no.
So we have Sarah Rose Summers here, of course, from Nebraska. And we have Miss Delaware here, Jaleesa Coatman. Good morning to both of you.
I heard you say Jaleesa, that gives me chills every time you see that.
It does. It's amazing. I'm so excited. We're going to Reno, Tahoe, and I cannot wait.
That's pretty cool. What do you think when you see that video of yourself?
I mean, I've watched it so many times now, it usually just makes me smile, but I think because it's coming to an end so quickly, I got a little emotional just now.
Aww. It has to be a little sad knowing you're going to give the crown away.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's been an amazing journey, and my goal last year was top 15. So everything since then has just really been lots of various cherries on top, you know?
Mm-hmm. How has your year been? What have you done during your reign this year?
Oh my goodness, so many things, and I've been so grateful. Before I won Miss USA, I worked in children's hospitals as a certified child life specialist, and so I've been able to utilize those skills from my career as Miss USA, which some people would think you worked in hospitals and now you're Miss USA. How does that relate? But I've just learned so much about listening to parents and their children and being able to bring a smile and how much that means for their overall care. So I've gotten to do a lot of that. I'm actually in Philadelphia right now to go to the Children's Hospital, the Shriners Children's Hospital today.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing that you're doing. And your life has also changed since that moment because you're engaged.
Oh, yes, I am.
Congrats. So you've been planning a wedding too?
I've been attempting to plan a wedding. In fact, it's really funny. My fiance, who's in finance and he played baseball, so he's not like the wedding planner, of course. But he's more on top of me. He's like, have you contacted a photographer yet? I'm like, no.
I love it. He's involved. It's good.
So busy lately.
Now, were you so busy you forgot your crown? Where's the crown?
It's over there somewhere.
Uh-oh.
I'll bring it for the children.
Okay.
Nice.
Because it's always more exciting when they want to be a little princess and see the crown.
Oh, yeah, that is great.
Yes.
Okay, Miss Delaware, tell us, where did you go to school? Where specifically you're from? We want to know all the details.
Yes, so I actually graduated from the University of Delaware with my master's,
degree.
yes, entrepreneurship and design, and then my bachelor's in environmental science, and now I'm working as a landscape designer for Longwood Gardens.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love Longwood Gardens.
Yes, yeah.
Congratulations on the state title. Are you excited
Thank
for
you
the
so
national
much.
spotlight here?
I'm so excited. So it was actually my second time ever competing. So
What?
Miss USA will be my third time on stage. Super excited to meet everyone. We have a group chat, but just to get there and meet all of the different states in Washington, D.C. too as well.
I hate to bring it up, but how nervous are you?
I'm not nervous.
Really?
Honestly, yeah.
She's like, no, Sarah's like, what? You should be.
Am I nervous?
I think that I, as Nebraska, had never placed a top 5 before. I didn't have a lot of pressure, so that was nice. But, I mean, you got a little butterflies. She'll get it when she gets there.
When it's time to walk out on
Right.
the stage there?
Right backstage. That's exciting.
Yeah,
The
more so
adrenaline.
exciting, not really nervous. Delaware's never had a winner. We have never had a
So
winner.
there you go.
Underdog.
Exactly.
Right?
You
were
could be the
Miss-
first.
Could be the first.
What advice would you give Jaleesa?
My best advice to Jaleesa and just all women and men watching is not to bother comparing yourself to others. And I'm sure you've heard me preach this over and over again, because if I compared myself to you right now, our journeys aren't the same, our degrees aren't the same, our hearts aren't the same, our minds, and so it's just such a waste of time. Whether you're interviewing for a job or trying to, get a date with that guy in college or whatever it may be, if you're sitting there wasting your time comparing yourself to someone, it's such a waste, truly, of your energy and your heart, because no one's exactly the same. And so,
And that's what makes us so
don't
special.
do that.
Right.
Backstage.
Be thinking about that. And we'll be cheering you on.
Thank you so much.
So you have the whole support of all
Best
of us
of
here.
luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And you're into broadcasting, right?
I'm
Television?
interested. I'm
Yeah?
interested in getting more into hosting after all of this. This year, I still
very interested in my work with child advocacy, especially in children's hospitals, but I think I'll do that more on the foundation realm. So as of right now, this year has opened up opportunities that I would have never seen.
Do you want to read us out?
Sure.
Are you ready?
Okay, where are we?
Right there.
Oh, this is probably a difficult one.
The Roomba?
Yeah,
Roomba.
Roomba creates a ruckus. Why the cleaning appliance forced a woman to call police.
And the classroom. You're hired.
Hey, thanks, guys.
And best of luck to you.
Thank
We'll
you
be
again
watching.
so much.
And that concludes today's version of Fox 29 News Now. You can catch us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for watching.